The Arizona sun beat down like the breath of hell itself. Jebediah Harrow stood motionless beside his dry well, hat in hand, sweat soaking through the collar of his shirt. The wooden bucket in his grasp was nearly empty, just 3 fingers of murky water left at the bottom. It wasn't much, but it was all he had left. His cattle lay scattered across the pasture, ribs poking through their hides. Crops were no more than brittle sticks poking out of dust. And in his pocket, folded 3 times like a death warrant, was a notice from Prescott First Bank. You have 10 days to clear your debt, or the land is ours. A hot wind howled through the valley like a wolf on the hunt. Jeb turned toward it, squinting against the rising grit. Off in the distance, a black veil swept low across the land, a dust storm, fierce and fast. It would be on him by sundown. He gritted his teeth, turned toward the shack he called home, and took a slow step forward. Then he saw it a shape slumped near the old fence post, half hidden by dying sagebrush. At first, he thought it might be a dead steer, but as he got closer, his heart kicked in his chest. A man, not just any man. A native, long black hair, tattered buckskin clothes soaked in sweat and blood. His skin was dusted with dirt, his body limp. A jagged gash ran along his shoulder, dried blood painting the earth beneath him. Jeb's first instinct was fear. Apache. He didn't need a second warning. The tales were common raids on homesteads, ambushes in canyons, settlers disappearing into the night. Helping a wounded Apache could be a death sentence. He backed up a step, heart pounding. The dust storm drew closer now, the wind howling louder like something unholy. He glanced down at the bucket in his hand. 3 fingers of water, enough to maybe save a few tomato vines, maybe enough to keep himself standing another day. He looked back down at the man. His lips were cracked, almost split. His chest rose in shallow, staggered breaths. The man wasn't moving, but he was alive. Barely. Jeb felt the dry air scraping his throat, the taste of copper on his tongue. Damn it all to hell. He turned, ready to walk away. But then he heard her voice clear as a bell, cutting through the wind like a memory brought to life. Don't turn your back on mercy. Jeb. He spun. No one there. Just the empty prairie, the dying grass, and that figure in the dirt. Still, he heard it. Sarah. His wife had been dead near 5 years now, buried under the redstone cross near the cottonwood tree out back. She'd been the one who kept the faith, always urging kindness, even when the world turned cruel. Jeb let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Then, slowly, he knelt beside the stranger. He lifted the man's head gently, dirt and sweat clinging to his skin. The man's eyes fluttered open, dark and wary, then slid shut again. Jeb tilted the bucket. The first drop hit the man's tongue and his whole body jolted. He drank greedily, desperately. Jeb let him. Let every single drop drain out until there wasn't a damn thing left in that bucket but regret. When it was over, the man lay back, breathing a little easier, eyes barely open but focused on Jeb. Why, he rasped, the word broken but clear. Jeb swallowed, his throat dry as ash. Didn't seem right to let you die. The man blinked slow, then, without a word, his hand drifted toward his belt, not fast, not threatening, just instinct, checking his weapon. Jeb tensed. His own rifle was back at the cabin. Fool move, maybe, but too late now. White man, never helps Apache. The stranger muttered. Maybe I'm not most white men, Jeb answered, trying to sound steady. The stranger gave a tiny nod. His eyes slipped shut again, exhaustion claiming him. The wind picked up suddenly, whipping the dust around them into sharp little daggers. Jeb looked up. The black storm wall was closer now, eating up the sky. He had no more water, no more options, but somehow he felt lighter, not saved, but less damned. He hauled the stranger's limp frame over his shoulder and trudged toward the cabin, behind him. The sky turned to ash, ahead of him. Fate waited by the firelight. The storm had passed in the night, leaving a thin crust of red dust over everything over the porch, the dried-up trough, the pile of bones that used to be a mule, inside the cabin. The air was still and heavy, thick with the smell of blood and sweat. Jeb sat in the corner, cradling his rifle now, eyes fixed on the man laid across his cot. He hadn't slept, not really. Every time he closed his eyes, he half expected to open them to a knife at his throat. But the man hadn't moved much, not beyond shallow breathing and an occasional groan, that is, until just before dawn, with a dry cough. The stranger stirred. His eyes fluttered open, deep-set, black as pitch, and landed straight on Jeb. There was a long, brittle silence. Then the stranger tried to sit up, gritting his teeth as pain shot through his shoulder. Jeb tensed, raising the rifle slightly but not pointing it. "Easy," Jeb muttered. "You move too fast. You'll bust that wound wide open again." The man looked around slowly. His gaze landed on the patched-up bandage on his arm, the firewood stacked neatly, the half-empty water jug nearby. "You help me," he said, his voice raspy, clipped. Jeb gave a small nod. "Gave you my last drop, too. So, don't make me regret it." The stranger's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes flickered. He shifted his legs beneath the blanket, still testing his strength. His hand slid close to his belt where a knife had been. Now missing. Jeb caught the motion. "It's over there," he said, nodding toward the table. "Figured you wouldn't want it too far from reach. But I'd appreciate it if you didn't reach for it just yet." The man's jaw tightened. But he left the knife alone. "You're not afraid," Jeb huffed a dry laugh. "I'm a broke farmer with no water, no cattle, and 10 days before the bank takes my land. What have I got left to fear?" The man stared at him a long time. "Still, you help Apache. That a problem for you?" "Maybe. That did it." Jeb leaned forward, rifle still across his knees but his tone sharp. "Let's make one thing clear. I didn't do this to make friends. You were dying. That's all I saw." The man nodded slowly, then looked away. "I'm Kai," he said after a beat. "Kai Redfeather." Jeb's brow furrowed. The name stirred something. He'd heard it before, maybe in town. Maybe whispered by an old trapper with one eye and too many stories. It felt familiar in a dangerous way. "You got a tribe?" Jeb asked carefully. Kai hesitated. "Yes." Which one? Kai's eyes narrowed. "Why you ask? 'Cause I've been raided before," Jeb said, his voice suddenly cold. 6 years back, my wife Sarah got beat bad when they came through, took 3 horses, burned the barn. One of them left a knife stuck in our door, bone-handled, etched with a red feather. Kai didn't flinch, but he didn't speak either. Jeb shook his head, staring into the dying fire. She never walked right after that. Died 2 winters later. Infection took her leg, then her life. Silence. Kai finally spoke. "I was 17 then. I remember that raid." Jeb looked up sharply, eyes hard. So it was your tribe. Kai met his gaze. Yes, but I was not one of the raiders. My uncle forbade it. Some broke from his command that night. Not all Apache follow honor. Jeb's fingers tightened on the stock of his rifle. I didn't kill your wife, Kai said, but I carry the shame of those who did. They sat in silence, the tension thick enough to choke. Jeb finally sighed, lowering the rifle fully to the floor. I don't forgive easy, Kai, but I ain't looking for vengeance neither. Kai gave a solemn nod. Good, because more's coming. Jeb leaned in. What do you mean? Kai looked toward the boarded-up window, toward the horizon. I was envoy for my uncle Elk Thunderhand, war chief of the 7 clans. I was sent with offerings to bind the tribes before the storm. What kind of offerings? Jeb asked. Kai hesitated. Things that prove loyalty, sacred tokens, 7, 1 from each tribe. Jeb felt his blood run cold. And now they're buried, Kai said. Near your fence. Soldiers ambushed me. I escaped but was wounded. I hid them before I passed out. So, you're saying you were carrying signs of war across my land? Yes. Jeb stood up, pacing. And now, if the wrong people find them, I'm a traitor to both sides. Kai looked up at him. Steady. Yes. Jeb laughed bitterly. Hell of a thank you for a drink of water. Kai didn't smile. You saved me, and in doing so, you stepped into something bigger than either of us. Jeb looked at him a long moment, then finally said, You're Elk Thunderhand's nephew. Yes. Then you'd better pray your uncle listens when you tell him who really saved your hide. Otherwise, Kai's gaze didn't waver. I already prayed. He said, to the spirit of the red wind. It was that wind that carried me to your door. The wind had died, but the unease inside Jeb Harrow only grew heavier. The sun was still climbing, casting long fingers of light through the cracks in the cabin wall. Inside, Kai Redfeather sat propped up on a cot, his wounded shoulder freshly wrapped. Jeb stood near the door, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the horizon. He hadn't said much since learning the truth. 7 of them, Kai said finally, his voice low, reverent, each one carved by hand, blessed by the tribe's fire talker, symbols of loyalty, of blood pact. They are not just trinkets, Jeb. They are spirit-bound. Jeb turned to look at him. You talking about those war relics? Kai nodded. We call them Chitodala, the spirit seals. Each chief gave one to the alliance. The plan was simple, unite the tribes against the bluecoats of Fort Redemption. Strike as one. But with those tokens missing, Kai didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Jeb ran a hand through his beard. Stepping outside, the desert was still too still. No birds, no movement, just the dry rasp of wind dragging sand across the earth. You buried him, he asked without looking back. Kai had followed him outside, moving stiffly, near your fence, in the rocks shaped like a sleeping wolf. Jeb narrowed his eyes. He knew the place. Together. They crossed the dusty yard, Jeb's boots crunching against the earth. By the time they reached the spot, Jeb's heart was hammering. Kai dropped to his knees despite the pain and began shifting stones with his good hand. After a few tense minutes, he uncovered a bundle wrapped in aged leather, tied with sinew. The leather bore faint symbols: an eagle, a crescent moon, and a clawed paw. Kai hesitated. You sure you want to see them? He asked. I already gave you water, Jeb said. Might as well see what else I'm dying for. Kai untied the cord, Inside were 3 relics. The first was a small bone pendant shaped like a wolf's head, the eyes set with tiny chips of obsidian. The second was a thin strip of copper etched with a spiral, glowing faintly under the sunlight. The third was a carved wooden figure, twisted like a flame, darkened from smoke. As Kai laid them out, something strange happened. The air around them seemed to ripple. A warmth spread through Jeb's chest, like a fire stirring in his ribs. The copper piece shimmered, not like metal catching light, but like moonlight dancing on water. The flame-carved token pulsed once, almost like a heartbeat. Kai looked up sharply. You feel that Jeb nodded slowly. Yeah. What the hell are these things? Kai stared at the relics. They recognize you. Recognize me. Jeb laughed dryly. I'm a dirt farmer with nothing but regret and overdue bills, and yet they glow. Kai said, that only happens when they're near someone chosen. Jeb backed up a step. You keep saying chosen like it's a good thing, but you also said these are war tokens. You trying to tell me I just became part of some war I didn't ask for? Kai didn't answer. Instead, he began wrapping the relics again, hands slow, almost ceremonial. There's more you need to know, he said. Jeb waited. There's a story, Kai continued, passed down through my people, of a time long ago, when the tribes fought among themselves. 7 chiefs created the Chito Dala to forge peace, but one of the relics was stolen by a white trapper, and within days, storms blackened the skies, rivers ran dry, lightning struck the mountains where none had fallen before. The trapper. He died screaming. His bones were never found. Jeb frowned. You saying these things are cursed, I'm saying, Kai said carefully. They're not meant to be held by the wrong hands, and right now, you hold 3 of them. A cold sweat prickled Jeb's neck. If your uncle finds out I've got 'em, he'll assume you stole them, that you're a spy for the army. And the army Kai gave a humorless smile. They'll shoot you before asking questions. Jeb stared down at the bundle in Kai's lap. So either way, I'm a dead man. Not necessarily, Kai said, but you must be careful. Jeb turned away, staring out across the dry land, his thoughts spinning. 10 days ago. His biggest concern was whether he had enough feed to last the week. Now he was babysitting 3 spirit-bound relics that could spark a war. He spoke quietly. So what's the plan? Then Kai stood slowly, wincing as he cradled his shoulder. We wait for the scouts. My uncle will come looking for me. When he does, I'll explain. You think he'll listen? I don't know. Jeb looked at him, and if he doesn't, Kai met his gaze. Solemn. Then you die, and maybe I do too. A long silence fell between them. Then Jeb said, almost to himself, damn that water. Kai raised an eyebrow. It's what started all this. Jeb muttered, if I'd just walked away. You didn't. Kai said, that's why the relics glow for you. Jeb didn't reply. He just stared down at the bundle in Kai's hands. 3 relics, 3 tribes, and 1 rancher stuck in the middle of a storm far greater than dust or drought. The wind came first, hot and sharp, thick with the scent of iron and dust. Then the hooves followed, dozens of them, pounding the earth like distant thunder, rising over the hills in perfect rhythm. Jeb stepped out onto the porch, squinting into the horizon, his heart sinking with every second. They were coming. Riders. Painted faces, spears tipped with bone, feathers streaming from hair and saddle, at least 30 strong, fanning out in a wide arc, closing in fast on the ranch. Kai limped outside, his face pale, lips tight. "It's them," he said. "My uncle's war band." Jeb didn't reply. He didn't have to. By the time the riders reached the fence line, Jeb's hands were raised. The sacred bundle was hidden inside the cabin, buried under the hearthstone, wrapped in cloth and silent prayers. The first to dismount was massive, twice the width of Jeb, painted in red and ash black. His eyes locked on Kai, then on Jeb. "Elk Thunderhand," Kai whispered. The chief strode forward like a storm on legs. His voice, when it came, was thunder. "Why is my blood on your land?" White man, Jeb didn't speak. Kai tried. "Uncle." But two warriors were already on him, pulling his good arm behind his back. He grunted in pain but didn't resist. "He saved me," Kai shouted. "I was wounded, ambushed by bluecoats." But his voice was lost in the howling wind. Thunderhand stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of a curved obsidian blade. He looked at Jeb like a wolf might look at a crippled deer. "I see my nephew bleeding. I see you standing." Jeb clenched his jaw. "I gave him water, saved his damn life." Lies. One warrior spat. Another stepped forward taller, leaner, eyes sharp as hawk talons. He held up a piece of cloth military gray. "Found this," he said, "near the fence. Tracks, too. Boot prints, not Apache." The warriors murmured. Jeb felt the world tilt beneath him. "You think I work with soldiers," he snapped. "I haven't seen a soldier in weeks, but no one listened. Not really." The truth hung in the air, thin and weak, like smoke from wet wood. Thunderhand raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. "We test him," he said simply. A younger warrior, barely more than a boy, stepped forward carrying a small obsidian bowl and a bone dagger. Kai's eyes widened. "The blood right." The chief nodded. "He says he's no enemy. Let the spirits see his blood." Jeb didn't move. "And if I say no, then you admit guilt." Jeb cursed under his breath, then stepped forward. The young warrior approached with calm hands. He sliced across his own palm, letting the blood drip into the bowl. Then, with a gesture, he offered the dagger to Jeb. Jeb hesitated, then took it. The steel was cold, sharp. He looked Thunderhand straight in the eye and dragged the blade across his own hand. Blood welled up instantly. He let it drip beside the others. The two warriors touched foreheads, each pressing their bleeding hand to the other's chest. When it was done, the boy spoke in Apache. Thunderhand listened. Then, without expression, he turned to the others. "He bleeds. He speaks no lies, but still, I feel storm," as if summoned by the words. The sky above cracked lightning flashing through a wall of dust rising in the west. The storm was here. Suddenly, a commotion near the fence. Another scout ran in, eyes wide, more tracks. He said, "Heavy, horses, soldiers, maybe 5 or 6. Kai looked up sharply. "They're still here." Thunderhand's eyes narrowed. "Or you led them." "I didn't." Jeb growled. "They ambushed him. He crawled here near dead." The chief stared hard. Then, finally, he spoke. "We stay. We watch. If soldiers come, we know truth. And if they don't," Jeb asked. Thunderhand didn't answer. Kai struggled against his guards. "Uncle, listen to me. He carries the relics. He could have kept them, sold them, but he didn't." The warriors tensed. Thunderhand stepped forward. "You have them." Jeb hesitated, then nodded. "They're buried. Safe. Bring them." Jeb turned slowly, then walked back to the cabin. aware that at least 6 spears followed his every step, inside. He knelt by the hearth, lifted the stone, and removed the bundle. As he stepped out into the wind, the first drops of rain began to fall hot, heavy, thick with desert dust. The storm had arrived, and Jeb Harrow stood at its very center. They rode in silence, 20 warriors surrounding Jeb like shadows cast in bone and blood. The rain had stopped, but the storm clouds still hung low, swollen with something that hadn't finished falling yet. Kai rode beside him, hunched in pain, whispering warnings. "They will not stop this," he said. "Not even me. Once the fire is lit, it speaks louder than any man." Jeb didn't answer. His hands were bound. His heart thundered louder than any hoofbeat. They entered a canyon narrow and curved like a serpent's throat. The walls rose red and jagged on either side, painted with symbols older than language. Bones hung from wooden frames, small totems spinning gently in the wind. At the center stood a pit round, lined with black stones, and filled with dry brush soaked in some kind of oil that shimmered purple in the light. Elk Thunderhand dismounted without a word. He approached the fire pit, knelt, and whispered something in a language Jeb didn't know. Then he struck a spark. The flame rose in a whoosh, not orange but blue cold and spectral. The warriors began to chant, a low hum like thunder behind the mountains. Kai was held back. Jeb was led forward. Thunderhand turned to the circle. "This man stands accused of betrayal, of stealing what is sacred, of conspiring with enemies." Jeb opened his mouth, but the chief raised a hand. "He will speak no words. The fire will judge." 2 warriors took Jeb's arms and guided him to the edge of the pit. The heat licked at his face like breath from the gods. "If you are innocent," Thunderhand said, "the smoke will rise white. If you lie, the flames will take you." Jeb swallowed. "And if I just stand here and melt?" The chief did not smile. "Then you are neither friend nor enemy, just forgotten." And with that, the warriors stepped back. Jeb was alone. The flames leapt higher, as if sensing his presence. The heat clawed at his skin. But it wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, like it reached inside his chest and grabbed hold of guilt he hadn't spoken in years. Then the smoke changed. It thickened from blue to gray to a strange, luminous silver. Jeb blinked through the sting and saw something form inside it. Sarah, his wife. As she looked before the sickness hair wild, eyes soft. "Jeb," she said, her voice made of wind and fire, "you hold hate in your heart still." He stumbled back a step. No, I don't." "Then answer," she said, as the flames shifted behind her. "Why did you let them go? The ones who burned our home," he remembered 6 years back. 3 young Apache warriors had come with torches and knives. He'd held them at gunpoint, wounded one. He could have finished them. Instead, he let them crawl away into the dark because I saw they were scared. He whispered, "Just boys." Sarah's figure faded, and the fire changed again. Now it was a boy, not Apache, white, blonde hair. Jeb recognized him too. The boy who once stole from his stable and broke his ribs falling off a horse. The boy who later died of fever in jail. "You let me die." The boy said, "Why?" Jeb dropped to his knees. "Because I thought I was teaching you a lesson. Because I thought the world would be better without thieves." And now the smoke asked. Jeb closed his eyes. "Now I know better." The smoke swirled again faster, hotter, and then came the last image. Himself, Jeb, Aged, alone, standing by a broken well, you gave your last water, the smoke. Jeb said. Why, Jeb looked into his own eyes, because, even if the world is cruel, I didn't want to be. The smoke erupted, roaring upward in a white plume that lit the sky. The warriors gasped. Kai shouted something in Apache. Elk Thunderhand stepped forward, eyes wide. The fire speaks, he said, and it says, this man carries no lies. Then the fire itself twisted once more, and a voice, not Sarah's, not any man's, boomed through the canyon. The one who gives water when he has none shall not burn. The flames died in an instant. Silence followed. Then, slowly, every warrior in the circle dropped to one knee, except Thunderhand. He walked forward, looked into Jeb's eyes, and said one word, chosen. The sacred fire had barely died when another storm rode into the canyon. But this one didn't come with thunder or rain. It came with steel. 20 riders burst through the southern gap, moving in disciplined formation. Their leader was a giant of a man wrapped in a wolfskin cloak, war paint stark against his scarred face. His horse bore the mark of the blood Apache crimson feathers braided into the mane. Kai's voice dropped to a whisper. Vulture Shadowhorn. Jeb didn't need an introduction. The man radiated menace, and his presence twisted the air itself. He dismounted slowly, eyes scanning the warriors surrounding the fire pit, all still reeling from the judgment flame. Behind him, tied to a horse and barely conscious, was a white man in a tattered army coat, rank still visible captain. The captive's face was battered, one eye swollen shut. He slumped in the saddle like a sack of grain. Vulture raised his voice. Brother, he called to Elk Thunderhand. I see you've completed the fire rite. What verdict did the spirits bring? Thunderhand's expression was unreadable. The fire chose mercy. Mercy, Vulture said slowly, dismounting. An interesting choice for a traitor. Jeb stiffened. He knew what was coming. Vulture walked forward with calculated calm. This man, he said, pointing at Jeb, collaborates with soldiers. This man trades in Apache secrets. Thunderhand narrowed his eyes. You bring proof. Vulture smiled and gestured. 2 of his men hauled the captive soldier forward. He stumbled and dropped to his knees, groaning in pain. Speak, Vulture ordered. The captain's head rolled up slowly. His voice came in slurred, stammered phrases. He, the farmer, gave us the map, told us where the relics were. Jeb's mouth dropped. That's a lie. The soldier blinked, his pupils dilated, his mouth working slowly. Kai leaned toward Jeb, whispering, He's drugged. I've seen this before. Root of ghost willow, used in interrogation. Makes the mind foggy, suggestible. Jeb's blood went cold. He's making him say this. Vulture nodded like a preacher. He confessed freely. Before you. He said the farmer lured Apache into a trap, then planned to sell the war tokens. He turned towards the gathered warriors. Is this who we trust? A white man who gives water in one hand and betrayal in the other. Murmurs began to spread. The warriors looked uncertain. Some gripped their weapons. Kai pushed forward. He saved me. He gave me shelter. That soldier's lying. A deep voice cut through the noise. Let the boys speak. All eyes turned. A young warrior stepped from Vulture's flank, tall, thin, with a single white stripe across his brow. He looked between Jeb and the soldier, then up at Vulture. I was with the party that caught this bluecoat. He said he was delirious, half dead. He spoke of a trap. Yes, but not who set it. Vulture's eyes narrowed. Cloud Runner, he said coolly. You doubt me. The young warrior didn't flinch. I doubt any story where the fire has already spoken otherwise. That single sentence cracked the tension like thunder. Kai whispered, That boy just bought himself an early death. Vulture forced a grin. Young blood always questions its elders. But truth cannot be ignored. He raised his hand. Let this be decided the old way, he said, trial by steel. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Thunderhand stepped forward. No blood shall spill in the sacred canyon. Vulture didn't break gaze, then take it elsewhere. But if your white pet refuses, his silence proves guilt. Jeb looked to Kai. Kai's jaw was clenched. He's forcing your hand. Fight, or be branded coward and spy. And if I win, Kai paused. Then truth has one more witness. Jeb stepped forward. I'll fight, he said. Vulture smiled. Good, he said. Let the dust taste your answer. The canyon held its breath. Warriors from all 7 tribes stood locked in silence, their hands hovering near weapons, their eyes shifting between the white farmer, the scarred traitor, and the sacred fire pit. Jeb Harrow moved slowly, the leather bundle clutched tight in his hands. Wait, Kai whispered. Are you sure Jeb didn't answer? He stepped into the center of the fire circle. Elk Thunderhand's eyes narrowed. Vulture Shadowhorn smirked like a man who knew every move had already been played. Jeb took a deep breath. Then, with a sudden motion, he threw all 3 relics into the ashes. The copper spiral, the flame-carved wood, the wolf-bone pendant each struck the coals with a hollow thud. The fire didn't flare, it exploded. A white-hot burst of wind surged upward, knocking several warriors back. The flames turned from blue to pure silver, licking 10 feet high, shimmering like mirrors. Then the canyon walls came alive. Shapes danced on stone shadows born not from firelight, but from something deeper. The warriors gasped. The first image a campfire deep in the hills. Vulture kneeling before a soldier in secret, handing over a scroll. The scroll bore Apache markings, a map. The second, the same soldier placing silver coins into Vulture's hand. The third Vulture and 2 chiefs, one from River Apache, one from Night Apache standing above a pit where bones lay. The shadows moved like ghosts, silent but undeniable. The warriors began to murmur, then to shout. A name spread like wildfire. Shadowhorn Vulture's smirk vanished. Elk Thunderhand's face was stone. This is trickery. Vulture spat, lies summoned by a white man's sleight. But then the final image emerged. The fire pulsed, and words ancient, glowing, etched themselves across the canyon wall. He who hides blood behind the mask of brotherhood shall have his face stripped by flame. It was the second half of the old prophecy. The crowd froze. Thunderhand stepped forward. Brother, is it true? Vulture's hand drifted toward his blade. Kai saw it first. Jeb, moved too late. Vulture lunged, dagger drawn, teeth bared like a rabid animal. Jeb dove sideways, rolling just as the blade slashed where his throat had been. Kai threw himself into the fray, colliding with his uncle mid-charge. The 2 tumbled across the dirt, fists flying. Warriors surged forward, unsure which side to take. Jeb scrambled to his feet, spotting Cloud Runner, the young warrior who doubted Vulture earlier. Get help, Jeb shouted. Cloud Runner nodded, then raised his spear high and called out in Apache. Several warriors rallied behind him. Meanwhile, Kai and Vulture were locked in a brutal grapple. Vulture's strength was monstrous, fueled by rage and years of betrayal. He drove Kai back toward the fire pit, trying to force his face into the coals. Jeb grabbed a fallen spear and charged. He jabbed low, driving the shaft into Vulture's side. The traitor howled and turned. That gave Kai the opening. With a savage roar, he twisted his body, throwing Vulture over his shoulder. The older man landed hard right on the edge of the fire, and the flames answered. They didn't burn him. They peeled. His war paint bubbled. His cloak caught instantly. His face, the one he'd worn as a leader, began to melt, revealing something underneath twisted, blackened, shrieking. The fire had judged. Vulture's scream echoed off the canyon walls. And then, silence. Thunderhand stepped forward, shoulders heavy. He looked at the ashes, then at his nephew, then at Jeb, and he dropped to one knee. The flame has spoken. He said, one by one. Every warrior followed. The canyon no longer echoed with war cries. Vulture Shadowhorn lay bound at the base of the sacred fire pit, his body cloaked in shame, his power stripped clean like bark from a tree. His warriors, or what few remained loyal, had fled into the hills, their symbols burned away by the truth seared into stone. Elk Thunderhand stood tall, though his shoulders bore the weight of betrayal. He looked over his people, over the gathered tribes, then to the man who'd turned the tide, Jeb Harrow. The old rancher stood there, soot on his face, blood drying on his sleeve, the spirit crest totem glowing faintly in his pocket. He looked as out of place as a snowflake in hell, but not one warrior questioned it. Thunderhand raised both hands, his voice echoing through the canyon. This man gave water when he had none. He walked through fire and was not burned. He cast truth into flame, though it might cost his life. He turned to Jeb, by the rights of the old ways, and by witness of fire and blood, I name you Shika Nali, Keeper of Flame. The crowd let out a unified cry, a call of honor that shook Jeb to his boots. He swallowed hard. I ain't no legend, he muttered. Kai grinned beside him. Too late for that. Thunderhand stepped forward. From behind him, several warriors brought out leather bags, heavy and clinking with the weight of nations, nuggets of gold, silver talismans, gemstones mined by hand, meant to buy rifles and blood. We gathered this to make war, Thunderhand said, but war built on lies poisons all. Instead, we offer it to you, payment for justice, and for peace. Jeb's eyes widened. I can't take this. Yes, Thunderhand replied. You can, because only a man who does not want it deserves it, reluctantly, with hands that once dug ditches and wrangled cattle. Jeb took the offering. Kai clapped a hand on his shoulder. Guess you ain't losing the farm after all. Weeks passed. The land healed faster than anyone expected. Rains came. The river to the north ran muddy but strong. Word spread that the alliance had survived, forged anew in honesty. Vulture was exiled. The blood Apache broken. Peace, for now, had a name, and that name was Jeb Harrow. He returned to his ranch under a sky that no longer felt like judgment. The cattle returned. The well ran. The bank never sent another notice. But, most sacred of all, each year, on the day the fire judged him, the tribes returned. 7 banners fluttered on the ridge above his land. Chiefs, shamans, elders all came, bearing food, stories, and fire. They called it the ceremony of water and flame. Kai came too. Now a war chief in his own right, each year he added another carving to the totem pole near Jeb's porch, a story burned into wood, a memory preserved, and the spirit crest totem. It hung by Jeb's door. Most days it lay quiet, its turquoise glow faint as morning mist, but once, only once, it flared bright. Jeb had been riding fence when he saw smoke to the west, a band of drifters trying to torch a wagon train. By the time he arrived, the flames had turned. Without warning, a burst of wind swept them aside, and standing in the ash was a boy, a child with skin like copper and eyes full of fire. He bowed. "You still keep the water," he said, "and now the fire keeps you." Jeb never told anyone about that day. Some stories, he figured, were meant to stay between a man and the spirits who walk with him. If Jeb Harrow's journey stirred something deep in your gut, if that sacred fire lit up more than just the canyon walls, then hit that subscribe button. Partner. This channel's where the dust never settles, and every tale packs grit, heart, and a twist sharp as a Bowie knife. Tap the bell so you don't miss the next story, 'cause out here in the West, even the smallest act of kindness can echo through time and change everything.